Hello class, this is your chapter 5 lecture video on the epidemiological environment. Now the objectives for this chapter would be to define toxicology and epidemiology, to distinguish among the classes of diseases, and to distinguish among the categories of diseases. So let's get started. Okay, first let's begin with the definition of toxicology. Ano nga ba ang toxicology? Okay, on your module, it is defined as the study of toxicants, chemicals, and adverse effects on health. On the other hand, epidemiology is the study of the effects of such chemicals, biological, and physical agents on the health of human population. So therefore, these are related items, but entirely different in terms of its technical definition. We all know that today's pandemic, epidemiology is at its peak. That is where we are exposed to a lot of uh, the agents of this COVID virus, and especially now with the spread of the variants. Okay, epidemiology on across the world is really at its most active. Here you have a model, okay, that will actually try to explain uh, the uh, this model will try to explain the conditions wherein man gets to be vulnerable with these toxicants. And you will use this COVID scenario in order to explain the fact that why some countries are more exposed and why some countries are not. Of course, sasama natin ng ating sarili dyan, Philippines versus the other nations. Okay. Anyway, in this model, you would be looking at man at the very core of it. And what makes man vulnerable would depend on the strength of his genes. So how healthy, so this would all rely on heredity, genetics, and some socio-demographic factors like the sex, the age, and of course the behavior. When it comes to the COVID virus, it has been established that um, in terms of age, of course, the seniors are more vulnerable. In terms of sex, there is no definite conclusion, but apparently it turns out that the reckless behavior of men, okay, would make them more vulnerable. Okay. Kaya bawal magpakamacho sa panahon ng pandemya. Okay? And also in terms of behavior, we take a look at the national attitude, and some political factors. But of course, the politics would also be included into the other environments. Okay, so the other environment, so the internal environment of man actually makes him the first. Okay, that's where the first vulnerability would come in. Gaano ka healthy yung tao? Okay, immunocompromised ba siya? Ganun. And of course, you have the three environments here that would also probably either mitigate or aggravate, okay, the condition. So we have the physical environment. This would probably, well, of course, include the air, the water supplies, and the food supplies. Of course, if the individual is living in a physical environment that is quite, unhealthy, okay, in terms of water supply and food supply, of course, under the predisposition for the contamination. And then the biological environment also, okay. Um, Say, for example, if the area has already been infected with a variant, we now have the latest variant on the news. Which variant is that? I think it's the Spain variant, or it's the variant that would actually cause reinfection, and that is actually what the scientists are actually looking at right now. And of course, you have the social environment. Dito papasok yung politics, economic condition. Uh, Based on observation we see on the news, politics has a lot to do with the social environment. Okay, we as per nation are at the very last. The vaccine has just arrived and it's barely enough, and we have the the least quality vaccine. So, of course, we have to understand that uh, politics and economics are actually a major force in the determination of uh, access to healthcare. We as a poor nation barely have the means, okay, to have access to these vaccines. And these vaccines are not free, mind you. These vaccines are not free. On the other hand, the rich countries like America, according to the latest news by CNN, 70% of the population are already initially vaccinated with first dose, and some have been fully vaccinated. And as per their targets, and with their economic and political will, with Biden's political will, and they aim to be 100% fully vaccinated, by the end of this month, March, or by May. And just to remind us, the population would be around 150 million or more. So, tayo, wala pa lang, andito pa lang yung first wave, di ba? Tira-tira ng Belgium, tira-tira ng China, and 50% efficacy. So, of course, the socio-political environment would actually try to determine if, our future when it comes to managing this virus and our safety. Try to add to the fact that people are ignorant and are scared. According to the news that we read by the newspaper, the acceptance level of vaccines in the Cordillera is still very low. Bakit kaya? Well, you have to consider the information. Okay? How much do the people know? And how much can the people afford to buy these vaccines? There's very little information as to how people can access, as to how much people can contribute. So kulang na kulang tayo sa grassroots information dissemination. So I bet even you and me, would be thinking of, will I be getting this vaccine? Okay, if I ask you, would your parents want you to have this vaccine? How much information do you know about this vaccine? That determines your attitude. If you would ask me, I will, but I'm not going to get the vaccine from China. Okay, it's my body, it's my choice. I'll be getting the vaccine, but I want the best vaccine for me, the best that my third world money can afford. Okay, so moving on, we have here a note that all others are vulnerable to manipulation by man or society. A vector is something which can transmit the virus. Yeah, of course. We also consider the fact that There is actually a myriad of factors that can actually predispose man to be vulnerable to um, infection. Okay? Uh, and of course, you have to consider all these things. But much of these things can highly be preventable and manageable on a personal level and on a national level. Moving on, you have here a diagram that would be giving us the classes of diseases. So let's take a look at the basics. Here we have infectious diseases. Okay, we have on the first box to the left, infectious diseases are brought about by bacteria, protozoa, worms, fungi, and viruses. And we also have pollution diseases. People get sick due to pollution, and these only a few examples of these are the emphysema, pneumonia, bronchitis, lung cancer, and liver cancer. Okay. Recently, I have a bit of the heart condition, so okay, hindi ko alam kung pollution disease yun. It must be stress disease. Yeah, yeah. So I'm now taking this medicine for the heart. Food poisoning, for example, is also a stress disease, red tide, and of course, cardiovascular diseases, and of course, mental health. So these are the more recent ones. So stress can lead to anxiety, especially in times like these. Okay, and even alcoholism, mind you, especially for the boys. Okay, we also have allergies. The allergies are superficial. Okay, and yeah, it says here, did you know even dandruff can actually be caused by allergies. So if you get those okay dandruff, it's time to change your shampoo. So mag-organic ka na lang, mag-gugu at mag-aloe vera. Okay, and we also have developmental anomalies like okay, we have here the STDs and AIDS. Ayan na naman. Okay, why you go to daddy's doing the lectures? Man. Okay, moving on to the box below, we have here the categories of diseases. This will try to more or less outline, okay, the things that are involved when it comes to, okay, the condition of man getting sick. What are the factors? How many factors could there be that would lead to the uh, diseased, uh, to diseases? So first we have here the two-factor, and this would the two factors involved here would be here we have a scenario wherein you only have the pathogen, the cause of the disease, and man, the target of the disease. So a perfect example here would be influenza and acute coryza, okay, and of course pneumonia. I believe there are many more, okay, examples of two-factor diseases here. So you just have to bear in mind that it is a very linear, very straight model when it comes to explaining the occurrence or the category of disease. The second category, you will have here a three-factor. You have three factors involved here. First, you have the pathogen, okay, and there is a vector. Okay, a vector is just like um, a medium. And then, of course, you have the target, which is us, man. And a perfect example here would be malaria. Okay, so of course, malaria. Okay, the vector here being the mosquito. Okay, it is a disease of the blood. Okay, and this is the mosquito, of course, the unwilling. Okay, the mosquito every time it bites a man would actually transmit. Okay, the pathogen, and it goes into our bloodstream. And the same is true with okay the H fever and the yellow fever and Okay, other classifications when you have vectors. I believe we would also have here examples like um, parasitism. Okay, the parasite, and then it gets to be carried by other hosts like snails. Okay, or any other kinds of medium, and then uh, it goes on to man. The other category would be the four factor. Here you have four factors involved. In the disease condition, we have the host, vector, bacteria, and man. Okay. Example here would be the plague and the typhus fever and the H fever. So first you have the host. You have a vector, again in the form of mosquitoes, sometimes snails. Okay, sometimes it could also, a vector could also, well, most likely these are, other living things, mga insects, okay? And you have the bacteria, okay? That is carried on by the vector, okay? And of course, the man. This is like a longer, the process that leads to the disease condition takes longer because there would be like um, several processes involved. So the bacteria is into the vector, and then the vector, okay, will find another host, and then the host, okay, will infect the man. So there are actually two victims here, okay, the host and the man, okay. Um, so okay, next here on the table you would see um, how disease can be transmitted by, okay, the physical environment, specifically through polluted waters. There's so much in the water that can actually cause uh, health on humans. So here we have on the first column typical examples of diseases that we can get. okay, when these dirty waters would come in contact, okay, with us, either by, okay, direct ingestion or probably by exposure. So from amoebic dysentery, okay, to uh, cholera, to the enteritis, infectious hepatitis, to typhoid, and schistosomiasis. Schistosomiasis is some kind of a parasitic condition. Okay, so these diseases were actually brought about by various kinds of organisms that dwell in the water. It could be a protozoa, a hookworm, bacteria. Okay, it could be a virus. Okay, or a fluke. Okay, of course, a fluke is a parasite. And here you have the following symptoms. Okay, you might probably want to consider just in case you would observe someone or you found yourself exposed to this polluted water. So here are the things that you would expect. Um, Painful diarrhea with mucus and blood. These are very severe ones. Even severe anemia and bronchitis, and severe diarrhea and vomiting. And of course, a protozoa will cause you to have cramps and diarrhea. A bacterium can cause you to have painful diarrhea with mucus and blood. Virus would cause an individual exposed to these dirty waters to have fever, nausea, vomiting, severe loss of appetite, muscle aches, and, okay, general discomfort. And even um, paralysis and atrophy, muscle loss. So this kind of virus, poliomyelitis, is very severe. It's dangerous. Okay, so you can have a myriad of very scary symptoms, from headache to energy loss. Okay, and that of schistosomiasis would be there would be blood in your urine. Okay, muscle weakness and lack of energy. Of course, you try to have if you try to look at the logic. Okay, this may not look fatal, but if you have compound, if you try to imagine the complications that would be arising out of this, it would definitely lead to fatal conditions. So therefore, the video that you have watched, the boy swimming, okay, yung batang nangangalakal sa Maynila, you would expect him, okay, to be very much at risk. You would expect him. And I hope by now, if he's still alive, okay, I hope and we hope that he gets to survive, okay, or get himself out of this dirty water and find some means to support himself and his family. Okay, so this is where the module ends, and you will now be looking at expecting an assessment, and I will be posting it on your, okay, GC. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.